Why would aliens put implants into human beings is a question I've been asked many times. Why not? We do it. We do it with lesser life forms. We do it continuously. And obviously, at least our objective is to learn more about the life form that we're studying. I'm Dr. Roger Leir, and I've been doing research in the alien abduction phenomena. Myself and my surgical team has performed 10 surgeries for removal of objects from individuals who allege alien abduction. These are two specimens which were removed during a surgical procedure, and they were both encapsulated in a very dark gray membrane, which you could not cut through with a surgical blade. A laboratory was not told that they were surgical specimens. They have been likened to meteorite samples. There are numerous books and videos that certainly available today that were not available years ago. We now have a non-profit 501c3 organization called the Aliens and Scalpel Research. And we can now get grants from various scientific and non-scientific sources, as well as private donations, to help carry on the research. And the purpose of this, of course, the net purpose, is to get the information out to the public.
How difficult it would be to begin research such as this, let alone continue research such as this. So please make welcome a man who is as brave a man as could possibly be sitting in this room to be investigating these sorts of things, Dr. Roger Leir.
Thank you, Peter. Well, thanks, folks. And first of all, I'd like to thank all those that were responsible for getting me here, Glynis and Diane and Mary and so many others that have been so kind and caring to me while I've had my stay in this really great country. Now, what we're going to cover today, as I said, is a tremendous expanse of work and things that I have done over the past few years in relation to the alien abduction phenomena. I don't do what John Mack does, or Bud Hopkins does, or John Carpenter, or Mary Rodwell. Those folks are all good folks, and they're interested in a different aspect of the abduction, which is the abductee and the story of what happened to them. This is all very important. But what I'm interested in is the physical and scientific aspects of the subject. You might say I'm interested in that which you can hold in your hand, the so-called smoking gun. And I have a lot of smoking guns. So the things that I'm going to talk to you about today, it's all true, it's all real, but don't come back to me if you don't like what you hear. Go back to the scientists that have looked at these objects. Because all I am is in the capacity of the messenger. I am telling you what the reports say, and some of the reports are printed in the back of some of my books, or you can get it by going to my website, which is alienscalpel.com. If you want to take notes on that, very simple, Alien Scalpel, it's all one word with one S. The other, you can get this material through a website for the National Institute for Discovery Science. Now, I didn't get into this subject to prove that this was a reality. It was the other way around. I got into the subject to disprove this and to prove that these objects were nothing except some mundane things that should not be in a foot. And over about 40 years of podiatric medical practice, I've removed about everything that is possible probably to remove from the human body. Hair, paper, nails, bits of metal, coral, wood, whatever. So I've seen a lot of different things, but honest to God, I've never seen anything like these. So what we've done so far, as you saw in the film, we've done 10 surgeries for the removal of objects. So far we've removed 11 objects. One of these turned out to be a very expensive piece of glass. And I don't mean that it was expensive to produce, I mean that it was expensive to find out what it was. It was a very strange piece of run of glass by Dow Corning Glass Works that used sulfur in the glass, and the glass had both characteristics of crystal and glass. So it had its fool for quite a while, but as without the application of applied true science used in the proper manner, which should be used more often in this field and is not, can really do something to contribute knowledge to the entire world with reference to the UFO subject. Now, that's what I try and do. And also lately, I've been all over the world this year and for the past few years. My heart is not that good anymore, so next year I'll probably be staying pretty close to home, and you might not see me at conferences. But anyway, I want to warn you folks who go to conferences or have conferences here or listen to things on TV or read the magazines or the available UFO literature. Here's my warning, take it for whatever way you want. Anyone that gets up before you that's a researcher in this field or claims they're a researcher in the field, no matter what their qualifications seem to be, if they give you the indication they have the answers, then you better put at least one finger in your ear and turn around and leave, because we don't. And by using science as a tool instead of an enemy, we can find out a lot of things, and that information that is gleaned from scientific investigation belongs to every single person in this room, every single person in the state of Queensland, Australia, and the rest of the world. It's yours, and that's what I'm here to do. So again, there are people that walk among us that try and portray the fact that excuse me, they have all the knowledge, but they don't. It's okay to theorize. That's scientific and works well, and then you must really take the theory and take it into a lab and either prove it or disprove it. Now, if we could have the house lights down and see the first slide, I'm going to take you through a rather rapid slide presentation. And when I get just about to the end, I'm going to talk about another subject completely, which is why alien abductions occur. And again, I don't have the answer. This is my particular theory. I could be all wet. But I think that I found at least one key to why most alien abductions are going on. Implants, that's what I do. I went to a person and I said, gee, I need a slide to introduce my talk. So the first slide that he generated for me was a slide of Stonehenge. And I said, well, gee, that's really beautiful. I think it's really nice, but what does it have to do with implants? He got the idea, so I had this one made. Next, please. Well, if they're going to come here from somewhere else, I guess they got to drive something. So here's an artist concept of what they come in. It has absolutely, folks, no basis in reality, but it's a nice picture. Next. Okay, this is some of the instrumentation. You can see we've got an instrument which is holding an object. That object has been freshly removed from a nice, fresh surgical wound. Next. We'll go rather rapidly through these. This was the first object that I removed in August of 1995. It's a T, a letter T shaped object. Here it looks more like a Delta Wing aircraft. But it's two pieces of metal which are held so tightly together that you cannot move one upon the other, and it's wrapped in a very strange, dark, gray, shiny membrane. Now, if you remember anything of my talk whatsoever, when you leave today, I want you to leave with the fact that these metallic objects are covered with a very strange, dark gray, shiny membrane. A dark gray, shiny membrane that you can't cut through with a surgical blade. And believe me, surgical blades are very sharp. You can either sometimes cut a bone with one, either inadvertently, I hope not, or on purpose if you have to. So this is the first object that we removed covered with this membrane. Next. Okay, this is self-explanatory. Next. Okay, we do use both color and black and white photography. All the surgeries are videoed. We have live witnesses there that watch the surgery. We have some that watch it on television monitor. We have professional writers there that will write about it. All the specimens are sealed in a container for the first portion of a chain of evidence. We use the same methodology as the justice system does. The containers are sealed and never opened again unless they're opened under a video camera and are signed for. Next. Here's one of the little cantaloupe seed-shaped objects, and I'm going to show you a series of these. And when I say these are almost identical, I usually try and mean what I say, so we'll have a little test here down the line. Next. Here's another one, and you can compare that to the first one and say, well, gee, that is the first one. But ask yourself, truly, truly in your mind, is that the first one? Next. Here we're looking at x-rays. Now, one of the criteria that we have set up for surgical candidates is they must have a demonstrable object which appears on an x-ray, a CAT scan, or an MRI. Now, I've run about 300 emails behind, so if you email me and you don't get an answer right away, I apologize. Just hang on. We'll eventually get back to you. Now, a lot of people think they have implants, but they don't. They may have objects other than implants in them, or some are tumors or other natural growths that appear on the human body. Next. Here's an object right here, and you can see that it's above the bone. Most of these objects we find are down deep. They're within the close proximity to the bone, but not touching the bone. They're in an area where the tissue has not reacted with an inflammatory response. Very strange. How do you get a foreign object into the body and not have it react? We feel that one of the reasons for this is that these metallic objects are covered with a very dark, gray, shiny membrane. Good. And as I said, you can't cut through it with a surgical blade. But anyway, we think that this might be the reason why the body doesn't react with either a rejection or an inflammatory reaction. So if we could raise enough funds or get some outside interest without them stealing everything, and we could reproduce this membrane, you can see it would be kind of a contribution of kind to medical science. Because you could wrap a pin, a screw, a nail, a plate, a heart, a liver, a kidney, or whatever else, and the person would not have to spend the rest of their lives taking immunosuppressive agents such as cyclosporin or Imuran or some of those. I'm not saying that the drug companies would be totally happy, but there'd be a lot of happy people around. This is the same object, and when you look at an x-ray and you turn the part that you're x-raying in various angles, you can see that here it looks a closer proximity to the bone. Also, you can see some interesting shape to it. Now, this gentleman came from a small town in Colorado, Yuma, Colorado. He had one experience about 17 years before he contacted me with his wife. They were driving down the street late at night, coming back from Denver to eastern Colorado. It was about 11:30 at night, no moon, dark, desolate area, and saw a light behind them driving a truck. His wife is a registered nurse, very qualified observer. He said to her, "Oh, is that a truck behind us or what?" And she said, I think it's an or what, because I think it's flying. And it caught up to him and started paralleling the truck coming over the tree area until they got to a clearing. And Tim then slowed down, came to a stop, and at that point this flying object crossed the road in front of him and came to a halt out in a parallel field to the left side of the truck. The driver, Tim, looked at it and turned to his wife, and they both looked at each other rather quizzically, and he said that he had an urge to get out and find out what this was. Well, that's the last thing he remembers. No, not quite. There's one more part. He saw a light come on. Actually, one light right on top of the other. It filled the cab of the truck with this very brilliant bluish-white light, and then the next thing he remembers, both hands are on the steering wheel. He turns to his wife and said, "Well, I think we should go to town now, dear." So they did. They proceeded on home, and when they got there, things just didn't seem right because 3 hours were missing. Now, strangely enough, because the guy is a cement contractor and because he had 3 young daughters that were going to school and they lived in a very small farming town, he didn't want the word to get out that he saw something weird, you know. So they didn't tell anybody. Nobody. Not the rest of the family, the neighbors, the church, nobody. And then one day, about 17 years later, he smacked himself on the thumb with a hammer, and he thought, well, gee, maybe I broke my thumb. So he went to the local hospital and had an X-ray taken. The doctor saw this in his arm, and he said, "No, that's impossible. I've never had anything like that to happen. I can't have anything in there." And the doctor said, "Yeah, well, Tim, there it is. You got it. Fortunately, your thumb was not broken." So he began to think about it, and something clicked in his mind, and he related that immediately to the experience that he had so many years ago. And it was after that that he was able to contact me. He seemed like a very compliant person, sent me the x-rays, we showed it to our radiological consults, and it came to the conclusion that there was a foreign, what appeared to be metallic foreign body in the wrist area. And so we invited him if he so wished, and we don't do this on anybody unless they wish to have it done. Also, another portion of the criteria is they must have some kind of distress, either physiological or psychological distress. We don't go on fishing expeditions in people's bodies looking for foreign objects where nobody is being bothered by it. So they have to have, as I said, a connection to some kind of a UFO event, conscious memory, abduction. We don't want anybody to have undergone regressive hypnosis prior to the time when we do the surgery. Why? Simple. We don't want the criticism. We don't want to be accused of putting false memories into somebody's head. So afterwards, once the surgery is done, if they wish to have their memory enhanced and they want to undergo regressive hypnosis, we supply them with an individual such as the ones I mentioned, Bud Hopkins and so on, and they get it done, and then we record that enhanced memory as part of their file. But as I said, I'm not here to look at UFO abduction stories. I think they're all fascinating. I think they're all tremendously interesting. But it's this kind of stuff I'm interested in, physical evidence. Next. Okay, when I first started doing these surgeries, we did the first procedure in an office with a general surgeon assistant and a number of other people there, but we didn't have any time-saving devices. Now we do. This is called a C-arm, and This costs about $1,500 a day to rent, so you can see these surgical procedures are not cheap. Yet we don't charge the individuals a penny for any of this work. We pay for their medication, and we pay for their post-op care examinations and laboratory. All they have to do is qualify and get themselves to us. We don't go to them. Next. This C-arm device we can use to actually look through the part where the object is, and then the surgery procedure is recorded on these two television screens. This is an instrument here, and you can see it approaching the object. You can see it when it clamps the object, and we bring it forth so it's visualized, and then dissected free from the surrounding tissue. Also, when we sent these in for analysis, as I told you, that there is no evidence of inflammation, but what I didn't tell you is that the tissue is loaded with a certain type of nerve endings called proprioceptors, which are not politically or anatomically correct for the area. Next. Also, you can see Tim is laying on the table there. We only use a local anesthetic. We don't use general. We have used hypnosis in a couple of cases because the patient was quite apprehensive, and so we didn't want him to feel any pain, so we did use a local anesthetic and a hypnoanesthesia. Next. This is the object that we removed from Tim, and we have the four of these that looked, as I say, almost exactly the same. We call them little cantaloupe seed-shaped objects, and they are metal rods, a few millimeters in length by a few millimeters in width, very similar to sometimes a very thick lead pencil, lead type piece. And they are covered with this very strange, dark, gray, shiny biological membrane. Okay, next. There it is on a surgical sponge. This is not the kind of sponges, you get off the bottom of the ocean. These are gauze pads. Before I started doing any of this, I researched the literature and wanted to make sure that the objects were safe in the first place after we took them out, because there had been a few people before me that supposedly removed objects, except nobody came up with anything. All there was talk about, oh, it turned to vapor, turned to powder, dropped on the floor, my dog ate it. Just all sorts of things, but nobody really came out with any. So I wanted to be safe, so I thought, gee, what is a good thing to preserve these objects in? So I thought, well, maybe a piece of the person that it came out of would be a good thing, and what's an easy thing to get from the body that we could use? Hey, how about blood? So we took blood and we spun it down, took off the liquid portion, which is the serum, and that with a preservative and an anticoagulant made a wonderful transport and preservative medium to put these objects in, and ever since then they've been as happy as clams. Next. Another view. Next. 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 And not only that, but the membrane becomes soft and you can cut through it. Next. Here's a greater close-up view of the area where you're actually seeing the metal right through the membrane where it became transparent. Next. We discovered something else. On one of these specimens, actually we have three specimens that have this little area, and these look like little egg sacs. What a strange thing to find. Next. Again, these little sacs. What would that be doing on a membrane wrapped around a piece of metal material that came from the inside of the body? Next. Again, you can see these. Can everybody see these okay? Okay, we had a little French biologist who had a PhD in biology, and she was also a physician. And she said something like, and pardon if I don't do this correctly, but she said something like, "This is the strangest thing I have seen come from the human body." And you'll see pictures of her. She's kind of a cute gal. But we had another scientist lady who came along and said, "I'll tell you what, I'll donate a microtome blade." You all know what a microtome is? It's like a meat slicer, you know, it slices up deli and stuff. But what you do is you take your specimen and you freeze it in a block. And then when it's frozen in this block, you can put it on this microtome slicer and you can slice through the frozen material, and it makes very fine slices that you can then put under a microscope and you can look at it. So, and these blades are extremely expensive. So this one scientist said, "I'll tell you what," she says, "I'll donate a microtome blade if I have your permission to take a piece of this off and slice it up and look at it under a microscope." And I said, "Well, darling, you got it." So that's exactly what we did. Next. And here are the materials being sliced off. Egg sacs. Next. And here we begin to see what it looks like as it comes off. Next. And this, changing horses for a minute, this is the object again. This is the metal that's inside, and then the membrane has been totally removed. And as I said, we found that when it became soft, you could totally separate it from the metal, except when you look at it through even higher magnification on a scanning electron microscope, where you can see part of this membranous organic tissue has been anchored into the metal. Next. Now the way that we get the outer coating off is to use an abrasive material. It's kind of like sandpaper, except it's in a liquid slush form, and it's abraded across here, and inside you'll see there's a very shiny metal. Next. More of the same. Next. See how shiny this metal is inside? This outer coating is around here. Next. Now also you can see these abrasion marks. These are not normal. This is not part of it. This is where the area has been abraded or sanded, so to speak. And this is what it looks like under magnification. Next. Next. Now, this is when you cut through these sacs and it's on water, some stuff comes floating out. And guess what that stuff is that's inside these sacs? Anybody want to take a stab? Guess?
Strange gray.
Oh, the guy is a good learner, but no, you're wrong, sir. Anybody else? What do you got to lose? Take a guess. Blood? No, not blood.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Mucus? No.
Oxide.
No, I'll have to tell you. It's oil. Oil. Yep. Standard Oil found out about this and I'm dead. No, it's oil. And what a strange thing to be found in sacs attached to a membrane that surrounds a piece of metal that has been taken out of the human body where there's no scar for it wherever it was put in. High strangeness. Next. Next. Now the oil droplets were on the water with higher magnification. You can see that here. Now what is this oil? You know, what kind of oil is this? Well, I had the privilege of having this analyzed at a black budget laboratory in Texas. And the guys were very interested in this kind of stuff, but the lab director was kind of ticked because he stood out in the hall like this. And all these scientists who are on the payroll to do black budget work for the military and the U.S. government are in this little room crowded around this stuff looking at my stuff. So it doesn't make the laboratory director happy. But we did subject this oil to a test called Raman spectrometry, and we found out all the acids, or the amino acids that are in this oil, and fatty acids. But what do you know? It didn't fit anything in the database. And the database has about 153,000 oils in it. So here we are, right back to where we were before. And as I said, or I might have said before, many times you do these tests or you use science to answer questions, and what do you get? 20 more questions. So that's why I don't have all the answers, and if I stay alive and keep pursuing this, maybe sometime down the line you'll have me back someday and I can answer these questions. Next. Using a scanning electron microscope, the amount of kV, this is 20 kV, is the force of the electron beam which is going into the object. So here we're looking basically at the surface, and you'll see these strands come off, and these strands that come off are biological tissue that have been anchored into the metal itself. We have no known human technology for doing this. Next. These are just some slides of some of the laboratory equipment that's being used. Next. Next. Let's see, yeah, good, we'll focus on that. And this is the gal I was talking about, and she's a very brilliant lady. Next. 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 That won't focus because it's a picture of a picture. Next. Okay, now we're going to stop with the slides right there, and I'm going to show you a short video of one of the procedures that we did with the object that was removed from Tim Cullen. He's the fellow you saw laying on the table. He's the fellow with one of these little cantaloupe seed-shaped devices. He's the case I talked about from Colorado. Now this guy was very interesting because he was mad. He was sort of a simple, hillbilly type person who represented a very large brain. But he was mad because he said, nobody had the right to do this to me. I don't care whether they came 10 trillion miles through space, or they didn't have my permission. They didn't have my permission to put this in my arm. So he was mad, and after the surgery was done, he went back to the small town in Yuma, and he went to two churches. One was the Catholic Church, and another was the Lutheran Church, and he presented this material on two different Sundays. He did a public presentation to the congregation, and he was extremely well received. And it got into the small 128-year-old newspaper, the Yuma Pioneer, and that was a front page story that was picked up by the Denver Post, which is a very conservative newspaper, and they printed a small one-page article. So that's the kind of guy he is. Now I'm going to show you what his object looked like when we put it on the bench, and we use magnetic. Remember, these objects are highly magnetic to begin with, but we'll put a magnet over it, and I'll show you what it looks like. So go ahead and run that video number 2. Here's the object, and see how nicely it flies up to the magnets. It goes quite a distance. Now we'll take it back out again, and we'll put it on the lab table, pass the magnet over at a particular distance. What you're going to see is these two little things. I hope you can see it from the back of the room. Two little things come out, like two little antennae, and when they move the magnet back and forth, they wave back and forth with the object. Hello, magnet. Hello, hello. Isn't that kind of a cutie? Now that's the one that came out of Tim's arm. Now, yeah, it will jump right up. We have one, I think, in slow motion here. Hey, bingo. Hello. So we took this object to the same black budget laboratory in Texas, and they did a scanning electron microscopy, and you can kill that now. And what they found was, you know, if it's highly magnetic, you would think that it would contain what? Iron. Iron, right. Well, it did. Very high concentration of iron. So then we did another test on it called an X-ray diffraction examination. Does there anybody know what that is? No one? Okay, X-ray diffraction looks at the molecular structure of a particular metal, and all metals are structured with an arrangement of atoms. Arrangement of molecules, and they form a crystal. So every pure metal is a crystal, and that's the way metals are supposed to be, and that's the way they are found in nature. Now, if somehow you look at the metal and you don't find any arrangement of atoms, that metal is then called amorphous. Amorphous. Morph meaning form, a means without. So this is a metal without form. So here we have a high concentration of amorphous iron. Well, you don't find amorphous iron in nature, and I thought you just didn't find amorphous iron anywhere. But being at a black budget laboratory, do you all know what I mean when I say black budget?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You should. If you're here, you should know what the black budget is. 98 billion was last year's U.S.'s black budget. Money that's totally unaccounted for, as a side note. But anyway, they look at this, and I found out that, hey, guess what? We know how to make amorphous metals. Now, don't ask me what we use it for, because I haven't a clue, and they weren't going to tell me. But there was a concession. They even told me that we know how to make it. But one of the things we don't know how to make, and so if a black budget laboratory doesn't know how to make it, then it's not in the purview of the field of science. We don't know how to make it magnetic. So here again, they're all crowded in here, this little room, looking at this magnetic iron, which is amorphous. And again, the lab director's out in the hall with his hands on his hips, because these guys are getting paid to do this secret stuff, not be in here looking at UFO material. So you know, you can catch a certain things about this. So anyway, that's one of the things that we find, and it's just one of the mysteries. Again, why do these have amorphous metals? Why are they magnetic? I often get asked, what happens, in the body? Can you detect anything? Are they putting anything out? The answer is yes. We found in several cases that they put out an electromagnetic field measurable on a Gauss meter of about 6 milligauss. And if anybody's into electronics or radio, you'll know that's a pretty strong magnetic field. When they're taken out of the body, they don't do anything. Also on an instrument called a trimeter, we get a mid-range reading on a combined scale, electrical scale, and magnetic scale. And that's also a pretty strong reading. We have an electrical engineer that we've used, and he has designed a special probe that's connected with an oscilloscope so we can read the waves and see what it looks like. And he says there's a good indication that there's something going in and there's something coming out. So obviously these objects are in communication with somebody at some distance. And before you ask the question, are these locator devices? In my opinion, that's nonsense. Because for two primary reasons. If we're dealing with an intelligent critter from elsewhere, extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional, time traveler, or all of the above, I don't think their technology requires some kind of instrument to tell them that they're going to be able to track a being. And we know now enough about DNA to suspect that, is Bill Chalker still here? Yeah, Bill's here. He's probably the one that's better on this than I am. But we know there's a good possibility that DNA contains its own sub-electrical signature. And so if you're in advanced culture and you've got the instrumentation, you don't need devices to track beams. You can track them all over the world. That coupled with the fact that I have a case in Brazil where a lady has an object in her foot very similar to what we had in the first case. And no, she does not want them removed. They scared her to death because they took an insect and they made it stand still in midair in a small pencil-like beam of light, and they told her that they could find this insect anywhere on the planet that it went. So that convinced her that she shouldn't have these objects removed. So anyway, I want to leap on, and I'm going to tell you about the last case that we did, which is a case of what seemingly is a biological object. The lady is a professional airline stewardess, still flying. She had one episode which occurred many years ago, about 20 years ago, before she contacted me. She was sleeping with her intended. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. She saw a strong light come through the window, nice big bluish white light, and she tried to wake her boyfriend up. He wouldn't wake up, so she got up, went to the window, she says, and looked outside. She saw a circular hovering craft. What would you expect, a streetcar? And we saw this circular hovering craft out there, and that's where the light was coming from. And I said, well, what happened after that? Remember, this is all conscious memory, no hypnosis. And she said, I don't know. I said, well, what do you mean you don't know? So I guess I went back to bed. And I said, well, you think you went back to bed? Yeah, she said, I guess I must have went back to bed, because the next thing I knew it was morning. And I woke up and I was getting up, and my friend was gone. I never saw him again. So they didn't communicate after that. So anyway, she woke up and she had all the feelings of the flu. She said she had muscle aches, pains, her eyes were burning, watering, her mouth tasted like cotton candy and snake oil mixed together. And she didn't feel very good, so she went into the bathroom and she sloshed some water on her face, and she was extremely thirsty, so she started gobbling water down. She said, oh God, I'm going back to bed. So she went back to bed, got up later, went in, took a shower, and as she was taking her shower, she looked at her arm and saw a lump. She said, oh my God, I grew a lump. Overnight, I grew a lump. Isn't that neat? And so she reached down with her finger to touch it, and the lump moved. And she fairly well freaked out, almost passed out in the shower. Not good. So again, she went back to bed, and she rationalized this around as something. It was a tumor, it was a cyst. She didn't know how it got there. There was no scar, no nothing. And worse than that, but she didn't tell her family. She didn't tell her friends. She didn't tell anybody again about this experience, and went on all those years until she had a friend who took her to a talk that I was giving in the eastern United States. She went in, she said, and she listened to me for about 15 minutes, got sick and left. She couldn't take it any longer. Didn't know why. And then it took her 3 years after that, she finally contacted me, and she basically lived about 20 minutes away. Got a hold of me by telephone. I talked to her on the phone. I heard her story, and I said, oops, I don't think I want this gal in my office. She's got a problem, and I don't think it's an implant. I was going to refer her to a psychiatrist for psychiatric treatment. And she insisted that it was real and so on, and so she convinced me to take a look at her. So she made an appointment. She showed up, and I asked her a few questions, and as I usually do with these cases, gave her the benefit of the doubt, took her in the room and said, okay, let's see it. And so she rolled up her sleeve, and there was the lump. And immediately said, oh, she's got a nice subcutaneous cyst. So I took my finger to go ahead and palpate the cyst, and it moved. And I said, oh my. Something is not right here. But I'm telling you the way a medical mind works. I said to myself, what happened here was that at some time or another, this woman must have gotten a subcutaneous infection. And sometimes when you get an infection, the bacteria will produce, you know, pus and stuff. And so it will make a tract underneath the skin, underneath the subcutaneous tissue. It's called a sinus tract. And then sometimes some of it will come out and it will drain, and you're still left with this tract. So here's what it's doing. You touch it here, and it just moves through this little sinus tract until it gets to the end. So in order to prove that, all I have to do is put one finger here, where it started from, another finger on the object again, and naturally it's going to move right back to where it went, because it's moving in this tunnel, in this canal, in this tract. That's how the mind works. So I put one finger here, I put the other finger on the object, and it went whoop, in another direction. Now you'd say, usually you'd think, well, maybe that's a clue as to something is strange. Not me. She must have 2 sinus tracts. And by God, I got 3 fingers. So I put one here, I put one there, I put one there. And I touched it again, and it went whoop. Ran out of fingers. It would move anywhere within a circle of about 2.5 inches. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, you know, when I started playing with it, and really, you know, at that time I had been in practice for about 37 years, and I'd seen a lot of things. This was beginning to freak me out, folks. I put my finger close by the object, and it would come to my finger, like, doggy, and it would follow my finger around her arm. You know, great thing, I guess you could sit there and play with that all day, as she had done for many years. But, you know, was it causing any pain? No, but it was certainly causing her a lot of psychological distress. And if I had the time, which I don't, to tell you the strange set of synchronicities that allowed us to operate on this gal, you would be as freaked out. October the 29th, 2001. This is the patient. That must be my name. And there it is, folks. Now, if you can't see this, then you better go to your ocular specialist. Close up. Hello. Take me out for a walk. Come. Now, this is for the purpose of withdrawing blood so that we can spend a dark line. We don't know whether that's something metallic or whether that's totally biological too. Now, the only test that we've done on this so far is some very superficial testing, and that superficial testing has told us that the surface is very smooth. It's closed up, gets a little patch over it, and the patient went on the following day for a flight, and she got along very well. We're going to take the object now and place it into the container of serum. We'll then close it up, put a label on it. The label will be signed, sealed, and the next time it will be opened, it will go through another visual process and signing process and so on. That's called a chain of custody or chain of evidence. Okay, if we can chop that off right now, we'll go on to the next subject so I can, I hope, quickly conclude. Now, what is it then, if this is all going on all over the world, what could possibly be happening? And as again, I said this is my theory, but I think others listened to it, and I really haven't had many arguments. Now, this may not be the only reason, for the abduction program, but I think it's one, I think it's a valuable one. I believe that the human race worldwide is being, and has been for some years now, undergoing a genetic manipulation. And I think this is evidenced by the children that are being born within the last 40, 50, or 60 years. They are not the same children, they are not the same humans as myself or somebody that's older. And this is evidenced in many different ways because a lot of different people, and you're going to hear a lot about it from Dr. Richard Boylan. He's going to be talking about the star kids. And there's been numerous names: star children, millennium children, indigo children, advanced children. We don't know why, but I've had discussions on this subject virtually all over the world. I've never had an argument from a mother, a grandmother, a grandfather. They don't argue with me because it's true. The children are different. They can not only do things at early ages, but they also have abilities that are far beyond what we used to be able to do. And some of us right now sitting here in this audience that are in this category can probably do these things, but they don't even know that they have the ability to do them. Now, I wanted to find out, well, you know, is there something that's measurable here? If this is really the case, can we measure this somehow? And so I came to the conclusion that there is a possible way. So what I did was I took 17 functional growth characteristics and I measured them over a period of 40 years, from 1947 to 1987. And I did not choose 1947 because it was the year of Roswell. I used 1947 because it just happened to be that the books on these childhood development statistics were written in 1947 and were never changed from 47 to 61. Isn't that strange? All over the world, and the people that do this are statisticians. They're not doctors, they're statisticians. So we looked at things as the age of running, the age when a child sits up, when they can sit freely by themselves, the age of weight bearing, the age of running, the age of speech, and so on. And so I compared them over the 40-year period, 1947 to 1987. And why 1987? Because that's the next upgrade in the statistical literature, was 1987. Was this an easy task? No. Let me tell you why. Because we didn't measure the same things in 1947 that we measured in 1987. There are hundreds of different things that have been measured all those years. Did you know that today, as a result of some interesting research, we measured the age of patty cake, when kids can play patty cake. And guess who else plays patty cake as a training measure? Anybody know? Astronaut training. The astronauts are instructed to play patty cake. They're in a sealed chamber and they reduce the oxygen pressure until the oxygen pressure is getting, all they're doing is playing patty cake, and they're watching their responses as the oxygen tension goes down. Because this is a thing that you can measure not only eye coordination, but it's muscle coordination and movement coordination. A lot of different neurological factors come into play. But did they measure patty cake in 1947? Nope. So I had to find things that were measurable for both cases. So I did. I found 17 different characteristics that we were able to measure. And out of all these characteristics, all of the 17, we found one of those that also sticks out as a very interesting factor. And I'm going to show you these statistics in slide format. And we'll run through some of them very quickly because they're boring, but we'll go almost directly to the graphs. And we'll look at the graphs, and you'll see this, and just think about it. So could we show those slides now, please? Yep. Get the other graphs. Here's the graph, sits with propping. I mean, look at the difference. The acceleration rate here is from 60 to 80%. Sits with propping. Look at there. Look at the difference. Look at this. This makes it very apparent. Go ahead, functional activities. Next. Okay, take a look at these. 16.67%, 66.67, 33, 80% obeys commands, 80% accelerated change. Next. Graphed out, you can see it. Next. Complex sentences, attempts to stand, bear weight, 62.50% accelerated change. Age of walking, 38.89%. Look at this. Runs well, 24 months and 24 months. 0% change. Now, if that isn't an indication that this is a specific genetic manipulation, then I don't know what is. Next. Okay, if we could focus that a little bit better. Here are some of the raw statistics, and as I said, I'm not going to take the time to go through all these because we have some graphs that illustrate it better. So let's just go on by these. You can just go by slowly. You don't have to go that fast. Look slower.
I thought you were going through graphs. Sorry, I'll go back.
That's all right.
One
Just,
graph.
yeah, for this. Can you see those front and back? If you can read one or two a page, well, that's all you need just to get the general idea. Next. Next. Take a chance.
It's the switch. Okay? It's the switch. Don't touch the switch. There's something wrong with the switch. Why don't you don't touch the switch?
Okay. Okay. Safe. Okay. Next.
It's a faulty switch, folks.
Faulty switch.
Yeah.
I've heard that before. Next. Especially when I was a young child. Faulty switch, my dad said. Next. You can catch some of these statistics, the ages. Next. 48 months, hops on 1 foot. Next. Next. Here's a book that was written in, is this the one, 1961? It was updated in 61, but it originally came out in 47. So between 47 and 61, there was no change in these figures. And you can see what things were like in 1947. Some are rather unbelievable. Pulls and stands, 12 months. 6 months, turns head. Go ahead. Next. "48 months is able to count 4 pennies. Swallows from glass, 18 months. Are we talking about today's kids? You see any change here? Just wait. Next. Knows right from left, 72 months. Why, if your kid didn't know that today, in a lot less time, you'd say, oh, I think there's something wrong. 60 months, 5 years, to name colors. Here's some more additional statistics. 6 months attempts to crawl. 6 months. My babies crawl today, I think, the minute you let them go. Next. Now, take a look at this one. I want you to remember this. This was 1947. At 24 months is when a child runs. Okay, we'll be right on time. Okay, next. Here's a question you can ask. How soon after birth do you think your child was able to see normally? In the 1940s and 30s and 40s, the ophthalmologist told you, well, don't get up too close because you're going to confuse them. They can't see, they can't focus, they can only see color, they can only see gray, they can't see color. And now I don't think there's any question. Next. Now, here's a couple of examples. I've had people write letters. Do I have time to read one letter? Okay, I'll take my glasses off. Dear Dr. Leir, I'm writing this letter to you concerning my daughter Angela Marie Christine, who is the youngest of my 3 children. She was born on November the 27th, 1974 in Ventura, California. In many ways, she has always been an exceptional child. When she was 2.5 years old, I told her it was time to start potty training for her. Her reply to me was, "I'll do it myself." And she did. However, the ways I believe her to be exceptional have nothing to do with potty training. From a very early age, as soon as she could hold a crayon, about 2 years old, she has exhibited an incredible artistic ability. I've enclosed some of the pictures of her paintings that were done at age 13 and 14. Along with her artistic ability she has exhibited, also at an early age. The ability to be very sensitive and empathetic to people's feelings. When she was in grade school, she would often tell me that she was afraid of hurting someone's feelings if they weren't included in whatever activity she was planning. She has always been able to relate to people on a deeper level than people can, including myself, and I consider her a very good judge of character. I've often thought that I named her appropriately, Angela. She is a little angel. Also, at around 3 years of old, she began having terrifying night dreams and would wake up screaming. I've not been able to get much out of her about those dreams. She will rarely discuss them with me. To this day, she sleeps with the light on every night. She absolutely hates the full moon, can't sleep on such nights. When I made drapes for her room, I doubly lined them, and I'm afraid it did not help. Thank you very much for a chance to tell you about my daughter. Okay, next slide. Next slide. This is Angela. Next. Now, these are examples of some of the paintings she did when she was 12 years old. 12 years old. This is not the exception, folks. This is the rule. Next. I mean, I can't even draw a straight line. About the only thing I can draw is flies. Next.